And my Scoutmaster one day showed up to one of our, patrol meetings or troop meetings? I can't remember what you called it. But he showed up one day with holding a record. And it was this one that you're looking at right here, this actual one. And he came up to me and he says, do you have any interest in having this record? And I looked at it and I knew of Black Sabbath. And I think what had happened is I'd heard of them from the heavy metal soundtrack, with Ronnie James Dio, but I didn't know a lot about them other than that song. And so he said, do you want this record? And I said, well, are you sure? And he says, my wife, I've got kids and my wife does not want this thing in our house anymore. Which is so funny looking back on it, like, my wife doesn't want it in our house, so here, put it in your house. Anyway, so he gave this record to me, and I remember taking this thing home, and I was pretty excited because this is, Black Sabbath, and they were, at that point, this would have been in the kind of early 80s, and they were legends. Everybody knew that name, everybody knew who they were, at least had heard of them. So I remember taking this album home, and putting it on the turntable, and it was just kind of this amazing experience, again, that I think many of you probably also had, because you put that thing on, you hear it for the first time, and it comes on and you hear the rain starting, and then you hear that bell in the background, and then you hear that thunder, and it's just kind of this setting this mood of just darkness and eeriness, and then all of a sudden the whole band together, boom, ba, ba, and they do that tritone thing, those three notes that right in that moment when they recorded those things defined an entire genre that would resonate all the way until today. Here we are in 2025, and those three notes still resonate. It started this entire movement, this entire sound that everybody knew as heavy metal, and it was those three notes. Just unbelievable. And then, of course, Ozzy comes in after a few measures with that line, "What is this that stands before me?" And the way he sang it, the whole thing was so amazing. And I remember sitting in my bedroom hearing that for the first time, just thinking that it was just one of the most amazing things I had ever heard. And it's such an incredible song too, because not only it captures both of the things that we would understand as heavy metal. And what I mean by that is we have heavy metal that is the really kind of slow, plodding stuff. And then you have heavy metal that's the fast rocking stuff. And that song had both things, complete with an amazing guitar hook. And it encapsulated so much of what would define heavy metal over the next several decades. It was incredible. And combine that with what I think is one of the greatest album covers ever created. And when you look at this thing, it just says simply Black Sabbath, and it has this British scene with this what looks like some sort of a witch or something on the front of it, and there's nothing else other than it's just all mood, and it's darkness, and it's this heaviness. And when you hear that sound, when you hear that song, Black Sabbath, the song Black Sabbath, you can almost just look at this picture and just feel it. Just amazing the way they did this. And then, of course, you start going through this record. So I listened to that first song. I remember hearing that going, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever listened to in my life. And then it comes out of that, and then you hear that harmonica start with the song The Wizard. And just this next song is just so incredible. And then I remember hearing on that first side of the record, I remember the experience all of a sudden hearing this bass solo. Ba-na-na-na-na. I'm introduced to Geezer Butler and this kind of amazing bass playing that he would do. And then you have that song N.I.B. And I mean that whole the whole experience of hearing this album for the first time, and then of course the second side, the whole thing was just so amazing. And it's today, this record right here, this particular one, is one of my most cherished records in my collection. And not just because it was what introduced me to Black Sabbath, because of how I got it. I had this scout leader that it was really cool because he he was able to see me on a personal level, and he knew what I was interested in. And I don't know if his wife was really telling him to get rid of it. It wouldn't surprise me though. But the fact that he was willing to kind of make a sacrifice like that just to help make a connection with a kid, just knowing what I was interested in, and then it's impacted me for the rest of my life. This music, and so again, this album, this thing right here in front of me is one of my most cherished things in my record collection. And kind of a funny part of that story is that all these years later, the guy that gave me this record, my Scoutmaster from back when I was a kid, is today my accountant.